Almost a century after it was built, the Empire State Building still pulls in more than $500 million every year. It out-earns modern skyscrapers across the globe. To understand this revenue, we have to look back to 1920s New York. New steel frame construction methods allowed engineers to build taller and stronger structures, setting off a vertical land grab. By acquiring a single piece of land and stacking dozens of floors of rentable office space on top of it, developers could multiply their real estate. The structure itself functioned as a business. New York businessmen John Raskob and Al Smith applied this logic to their next venture. In 1929, they announced plans for the Empire State Building. Their intention was to engineer a money-making machine, optimizing every square foot to return maximum revenue. Maximizing profit in a skyscraper presented a physical paradox. Every level added to a building makes the structure heavier, requiring thicker lower supports. More floors also mean more elevators, which consume the rentable space near the ground. On top of that, New York enforced zoning laws to prevent towers from blocking street-level sunlight. Planners drew a sloped line extending up from the center of the street at exactly 25 degrees. Developers were forbidden from building outside this boundary. To pack in the most floor space under these rules, most developers built right up to the line, resulting in steppy pyramid shapes. This diagram shows the financial flaw of that design. The pyramid shape creates massive square footage at the bottom, where offices were noisy and rented for about $1 per square foot. It shrinks the upper floors, the quiet spaces that fetched $3 a square foot. Following the standard blueprint meant sacrificing the most lucrative real estate. The designers needed a legal workaround to build a vertical tower. The zoning code contained a loophole. If a building's upper structure was reduced to cover only 25% of the total plot area, it was allowed to pierce the sloped line and rise vertical indefinitely. To make 25% of a footprint large enough to hold a profitable skyscraper, developers needed a 400-foot wide piece of land. Raskob and Smith bypassed the dense financial district of Lower Manhattan. They paid $16 million for a 400 by 200-foot plot in Midtown, betting the city's business center would migrate toward them. This base allowed them to execute their plan. After a few setbacks on the lower levels, they launched a tower for over 40 floors. By packing fewer elevators into a central core, they created a 28-foot wide ring of window-adjacent office space. They took on a high land cost to unlock millions in rental income over the long term. Now they had to construct it, and they were racing a deadline. New York had specific moving days for corporate leases, the most important being May 1st. Missing that date meant the building would sit empty for months. To hit the May 1st target, engineers relied on prefabricated steel columns and beams. By manufacturing identical pieces off-site, they shipped them in and assembled the skeleton immediately. Over 3,000 workers swarmed the site. They built railway carts onto the individual floors to transport materials and opened restaurants inside the rising frame so crews wouldn't lose time traveling down to the street. The building climbed by more than 4 floors every week. In just over a year, the entire tower was complete. They finished ahead of schedule with $10 million remaining in the budget. The construction phase was over. Then, right as the building opened, the Great Depression struck. 12 million Americans lost their jobs. National wages dropped by 45%. The Empire State Building couldn't lease a quarter of its newly constructed office space, turning the project into a financial drain. But the designers had included 2 public viewing platforms on the 86th and 102nd floors. This graph illustrates how the project stayed solvent. While office rent stalled during the 30s, the revenue from tourists paying $1 each to stand above the city spiked. They sold over 1 million tickets in their first year. The building survived the decade by monetizing its scale as a spectacle. Above those viewing platforms sat a giant mast. It was originally built as a docking station for airships, an idea that proved impractical and never worked. But as television technology developed, broadcasters realized that a mast sitting a quarter mile in the sky was an ideal place to mount an antenna. NBC moved in and installed a 50,000-watt transmitter. From that altitude, the signal traveled over 100 miles, reaching viewers across 4 different states. Today, that single mast generates around $30 million annually. Add in the viewing platforms bringing in $130 million and the office space returning $350 million. The gamble on Midtown paid off. By exploiting zoning hacks for premium space, building at high speed,
and adapting to new industries, the Empire State Building remains a $500 million machine.